Jeff, welcome back to the Bitcoin Infinity Show.
Great to be here again.
Oh, great to have you here again. This is like fifth time or something? I don't know if I lost count.
Yeah.
And let me say, welcome to Helsinki, Finland.
Yeah, thank you.
It's pretty cool having so many people like you come to my neck of the woods for this little conference we put on, BTC HEL, and hope you enjoy your time here.
I am looking forward to it.
Oh, great. We started a conversation yesterday over dinner, and I think we should just start there because it's so. I saw the infamous hand of Booth. It's just that just materialized in the beginning of it, and says, he's going to go on a deep dive. So one of the things we touched was that history is written by the winners, and that most people miss what that actually means. And that, to me, what that means, when you really think about it, it means that history is written by murderers. Because in order to win, you have to kill people. Like if no one ever initiated a war anywhere, then there would be no winner to write history, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Let's begin there.
Yeah, we've lived in a zero-sum game, entire history of humanity. And that zero-sum game had to aggregate, and it had to take from some people and accrue to others. And to carry on that zero-sum game would lead, obviously, to war and having the biggest military where you could enslave other nations and extract from them, or create a monetary currency that would extract from a monetary system that would extract from people. Virtually the same zero-sum game throughout all of human history. And what Bitcoin represents is an infinite game that is very different from something we've ever experienced, and that's why it's also so hard to understand. People don't have a mental model for what I talk about, for what this represents, and that mental model emerges over time because it has to compete with your previous mental model of what you think reality looks like.
I mean, deflation is one thing. To a certain extent, we've always had it. I guess inflation. Sorry, yeah. On the wrong path here. But on the gold standard, it was better, but it was not optimized the way Bitcoin is. Totally finite, right? But gold had the reason prices have been stable over the centuries in denominated in gold. I think there's a famous fact about a cow priced in gold costs about as much now as it costs as back in the days of Mesopotamia, like 5,000 years ago. So the question is, when did it turn into fiat? Is it pre-World War I or 1973, or what's the real tipping point where it turns super bad in your mind?
So I think this construct that you're talking about and why gold doesn't work for a number of reasons. As price goes up on gold, more people mine gold, and so it is inflationary too. So it actually doesn't describe the free market. And I'll go into that in a second. The second part of it is gold, it does better than fiat, a lot better than fiat. It always gets centralized. And then you either go to war to steal somebody else's gold or impose your monetary system on their gold reserves, or you change the rules of gold. Like it happened in 1933, and then again in 1971, you just change the rules because it's centralized, and you're dealing with an abstract piece of paper on top of it. You're not actually dealing in the currency of gold. But even if you just start where I started before on kind of the first principle of gold, if price went up, supply and demand, the price goes up on gold, more people search for gold, and it becomes inflationary. And if that kept on going up, you'd find more people searching all around for gold, and it would drive more inflation in gold. So when you say the same price, that's the thing that people can't wrap their head around. Prices shouldn't be the same in the free market. The natural state of the free market is deflation. It's not neutral. Because every single thing, the construct of the world comes into existence out of our minds, right? The physical reality comes out of our minds. And we tend to, I think throughout history, where there's always been this kind of false belief that we know just about everything. There's 2% more to learn.
Yeah.
When there's unlimited more to learn. And that unlimited, how we essentially solve problems and create abundance, is from our minds. Right? So everything in this room, everything that we can describe in physical reality comes from our minds. And that is almost never ending, being able to solve problems. So then how does that work in an entrepreneur or a setting? So there's a scarcity, which creates value. And that value is grabbed by somebody as we use the scarcity. And then because the value is that value is created, it creates margin. And entrepreneurs go in to attack that margin with different ideas to be able to solve that scarcity and bring abundance. And that repeats and repeats and repeats, that creative destruction, or the world we form out of those thoughts. And then if you think about that thought, so we used to use something, and then the entrepreneur creates more value. And if it creates a lot more value to us, we use the new thing. The output of what I just described has to be deflation. It's not neutral, because we wouldn't move our purchasing power for neutral, right? We only move when something gives us value. And so we are part of the equation, both sides of the equation, tackling scarcity. Right? We're essentially abundance creating machines, right? And we're the users of that same thing. So that output has to be deflation. And that repeats throughout the world. So anything that's neutral, so most people are measuring when they measure gold, and when you did, and you measured stability in prices, you're missing most of the equation, right? Everything should be way cheaper, and it's a world we can't even imagine, right? Because we talk through the system, well, it's brought abundance in the world, and we're better off today than we were one time before. But it masks, we can't measure what we've never been able to see. What it would have looked like with all of our minds competing in a free market to be able to provide value to other people. We can't even imagine that world, but that's the world that Bitcoin is describing. And as long as it stays decentralized and secure, it's the first global free market that's ever existed. And it will impose what I just described.
Yeah, the way Luke and I put that in the inverse of clown world is by asking a very simple question, like if a human being practices doing something, do they usually get better or worse at what they're practicing? And the answer is obvious, we get better. So, and the follow-up question is, so why aren't oil prices falling forever? And in reality, they are. You're just using the wrong denominator. As soon as you start using Bitcoin, you can see that this is actually happening. And it's the first time we've been able to detect that very phenomenon. That
you couldn't detect it before because you were always in the zero sum game.
Yeah,
you were measuring, your entire life has been from the zero sum game. So it wouldn't seem obvious what we're talking about right now. It would be really confusing for your mind.
Yeah, maybe you could detect it if you denominated in the Mona Lisa or something, and just saw how that went up in price forever. But the thing is, you need it. This is also a thing. Money is not a yardstick, right? It doesn't measure anything. The prices signal value. It doesn't really measure value. So saying that it measures value is slightly wrong. But still, if you're using that language, things really, the Mona Lisa really goes up forever in price in comparison to everything else. Yeah. So how do we communicate this to people? Like this is what we all three of us do for a living now, trying to communicate this, but it's such a hurdle, and I know. Even us three, I say, but all Bitcoiners have a very hard time imagining what a deflationary world actually looks like. It's very hard to live in that world and simultaneously being forced to live in the old world. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you have a perceived reality that is different from an objective reality. So, and I would say the entire world lives in a perceived reality of, in fact, so much so that they believe inflation is required for a productive economy. And so the two systems are they're opposites. Right? The natural state of the free market being deflation means you've never lived in one, ever. So you don't have any pattern recognition. So the way our neurons fire and our way we attach new information onto previous information. And why this is so hard for people is because there's no previous information that you can attach this new idea to. And so the only way you can get there is through constant repetition and through a deep understanding. And the other thing that people do, because they've always lived in this world where they actually believe that inflation is required for a productive economy without asking why. And then they listen to people pontificate about this. And all the economists are using essentially, as long as you don't ask where money comes from, then we can keep on this Rube Goldberg machine that is built on a complete lie. Because inflation is required for an economy built on a credit, where credit is lent into existence. That system can't allow deflation. So I understand, but people are conflating that with productive economy, right? They're conflated. So a debt system cannot allow deflation because the debt system would unwind completely. And if we lived in a debt system that allowed deflation, everything would unwind completely. That's a very different thing than saying, we can't trade with each other unless you steal money, right? It's a very different thing, but people are conflating those two because it's a system change. And so if you just stay with the natural state of the free market is deflation, if you objectively try to dispel what I just said, and if you can't, you realize that's the first principle. And if that's the first principle, that the natural state of the free market is deflation, then it touches every single other thing that you've always known. It touches everything. Because how does, even if it touches consciousness, it touches everything. It touches these things because if you think about it in consciousness, right? If you were in ego death or if you took psychedelics or anything to get to that stage, you can actually see the connection between everything. In meditation, I can feel that connection to everything. And from that state, though, and if I lived in a cave all the time, I could stay there. But when you come back down to see the manifestation of the world through the thoughts, through your thoughts, and the manifestation of the world doesn't match because we live in a different construct based on cheating, right? Based on a zero-sum game, then if you want to interact with the world, you're back in this other game. And what you're describing, why this is so hard, is people can get, even though it takes time, they can hear my words and they know it's true. But then they go back to their life and everything in their life operates differently. And that system has to exert more coercion, more fear, more control, because it's a structure that must get worse because the debt has to expand forever, exponentially, and it has to co-opt the free market in an ever increasing manner. And because people, once they start to see that, they're mad. Typically what they do is they lean into the system more, right? Yelling at people, thinking that there's a fix within that system, and they make it worse. And there's why this is also so hard is every single person has agency today. Bitcoin gave them agency. And And most people, and I would say even many Bitcoiners, are inside the jail cell yelling at their captors while the jail cell door is open, and they could just move over and just forget it all. Just forget it all. And by forgetting it all, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to get hurt. It doesn't mean that the fiat system is going to try to attack Bitcoin in every possible way and try to co-opt it, try to do everything. But you giving it more energy only helps that happen.
So you're basically saying if you want to find nirvana, you could either meditate in a cave or become a Bitcoiner and go to one of these Rockamotos and see us play. Those are your only two options.
What I'm really saying is, in time, the manifestation of the real world, the physical world, will match how you feel in the cave, because it'll come into existence on top of Bitcoin. It'll come into existence by an honest network that imposes more minds contributing to each other, that will look very different from the world that people imagine today.
Yeah, last time we interviewed you, we were on similar topics, and we had the next episode we did was with Volker, right? And we talked about free will, and he had some very interesting thoughts about free will. He's on the side. This has been a philosophical debate since forever.
Yeah.
But his understanding of it is that objectively we cannot have free will, since the neuron firing off will have to precede consciousness. So you have your consciousness, and you know that it has a lag. You know those experiments where if you stick a needle in my toe and in my thumb, but at the same time I feel it at the same time, but this signal up through my leg would have to have taken more time up to my brain than the one in my thumb, or even if I stick a pin in my ear. So consciousness has a lag. So my favorite quote about free will is from Christopher Hitchens. Of course I have free will. I have no choice but to have it. So the way I try to square that is sort of like, it doesn't matter. Like subjectively, we have to have free will. And if we don't, in any objective sense, and this is back to which extent the mind creates reality, I mean, it doesn't matter. We have no choice but to sit here and do this interview. We would do it regardless of we have agency or not. So it doesn't really matter. What are your thoughts on free will and like subjectivity and objectivity? Is the dichotomy false to begin with?
I think it goes back to information within a system can't carry more information than said system. Right. So use AI today. All of the AI is generated from our information within the system. Right. We are the agents that are opposite. We're the trigger that is providing new information, and the information that we're providing is, when I'm saying ego death, that's kind of the source. Everything's connected. Universe connected. Fundamentally, if the universe, I said this on your last podcast, if the universe is fundamentally quantum, then we are too, right? But I think we get so caught into our own mental models that we can't step outside of our mental model. We repeat things inside our mental model. And you can see this in other people. You can see this if you're a Bitcoiner and you can see other people inside their mental model. You wonder why they're stuck there. But you don't ask the question, why are you stuck where you're stuck? Right? You see it in everyone else, but you don't see it in yourself. So I think for me, the whether it's a false dichotomy or not, I think it comes down to the same thing. We very rarely question our own models in our own thoughts, because questioning our own model. So it's that outside question from the model is where the real insight is.
Yeah.
Taking us to new horizons. Sometimes it's wrong, but that question that peers inside, that tries to calm the mind and ask, what aren't we seeing? What is the thing we're not seeing? Is I think from a potentially different spot.
Yeah. Wait, but why?
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and I see a lot, like a lot of this in Bitcoiners, of course, there's more. It tends to be more self-reflection among Bitcoiners than other groups of people. But one thing we've noticed, which is also in the inverse of clown world, is we see this category of Bitcoiners that as soon as they realize that the government is lying to them, they immediately take everything Alex Jones said to be true. And it's just lazy thinking and hopping onto some other answer that seems to fit their mental model of what the world ought to be. And you get Bitcoin astrology and stuff like that. Like, well, how do we prevent that? Like, how do we, or
I just don't think there is a way. Like, I don't know a person who thinks exactly like me, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. And I don't, and when I say I don't think it's a bad thing, it means I can learn from all of their genius in different places. And they can challenge me in my own thoughts, and they can pull me outside of my own mental model from every single person I meet. I might not agree with them, right? Might not. But when you said even when you said Bitcoiners think more like this than others, I don't know if that's true.
No, but okay. So this is sort of alluding to your article finding the signal in the noise. So, because what I'm talking about here is really noise. So maybe it's not more common among Bitcoiners. A bit arrogant to say that. I realize that, but how do you find the signal in the noise? And what is the signal? Is it different for different people? And especially, how do we?
That's really interesting.
I see Bitcoin as more not a signal, but a noise remover. It removes the noise on every single level because you're provided with these truth goggles, through which you can see the world for what it really is.
So I'm going to challenge on that just for a moment. What percentage of Bitcoiners do you think? Let's say there's 100 Bitcoiners total, right? Just what percentage of Bitcoiners? What number of those Bitcoiners would you think truly understand the implications of the natural state of the free market is deflation, and are thinking of Bitcoin in those terms, and are trying and are making sure that other people are running nodes, that other people understand the risk to Bitcoin from their own actions? How many people do you think are there?
First of all, that requires us to define the term Bitcoiner.
Yeah, but that's actually what I mean. These terms create in-group bias and out-group bias. Yeah. Anytime you say you're different than somebody else, and so I'm not saying that, like, I massively relate to many Bitcoiners, and some of my closest friends now are Bitcoiners, so you guys included, right? But I try to categorically object to my own thing too, that makes me want to believe I'm better because I'm in a separate crowd that understands more. Because one time I didn't understand more, right? And when I see everybody, I see we're just so early on this journey of understanding that I try to, because we know in-group, out-group bias is a thing. We would never want to belong to a group that wasn't the better group.
No, but better is an interesting term here. I'm sort of fishing for, like, more or less correct rather than better.
Okay, so that's then if you hold that thing a noise reducer, then, and you go back to what I said, I don't think it's true for everybody. I don't think it's true for all Bitcoiners, because I think they're still pricing Bitcoin through the fiat lens. And in other words, they're a part of co-opting Bitcoin. I think this journey deeper down the rabbit hole to understand the things you didn't know is the insight for every single person, including me, is the insight that reduces the noise more and more. And that is a constant, what don't I know? What are the risks to the centralization? What are the risks to keep this decentralized and secure, to keep this something that completely rewrites the future? so we don't get stuck back into a paradigm where Bitcoin turns into imperialism 3.0, which is a whole bunch of new rich people.
So what in your mind is the biggest risk? Like,
so
complacency?
Yeah, it's this knowledge. It's this because I think when people realize that in 5,000 years we've never lived in a system that I'm describing, and they realize that. But remember, in those 5,000 years, there have been lots of people who have known this same thing we're talking about today. Yet why couldn't we hold it? And so something in us, because if we're part of a market, then something in us must default to allowing this to happen over and over and over again and giving people with more control and agency.
Is that correct, though? Isn't it something in some of us? And like if you're a sociopath and you're clever, which is, from what I know, quite uncommon. Like the Hannibal Lecters are much more rare than your average midwit being a psychopath. But wouldn't any system put those people on top because they're willing to backstab to that extent? I
don't think so. I think it's worse than that. And I think it ties into game theory. I wrote this post on Nostr. I'm going to say it tomorrow, whenever it's when I talk about this. But I think it's what I'm about to say. I think that if you take throughout history and kind of fall into that, constantly fall into this trap. If you like game theory, prisoner's dilemma, iterative game theory, multiple things. If you know somebody's going to cheat, you'll act differently the second time. You run the models over and over and over again. And you can see essentially what game theory is an examination of is oftentimes we will do what's right for us with worse consequences for the group, right? That's really what that's it. And you can predict what people will do, will do from that. Now, if that's true, and so if you just said on game theory and you added a couple more variables, and one of the variables you added to game theory was you will not get caught, no matter what. And the second variable you would add is I'm going to keep on increasing the reward. The reward starts at $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, $1 million, $1 billion. At some point, now I've looked at the data on this, and between 2.5% and 20% of people will cheat. It's 2.5%. It won't cheat, no matter what. But 80 to 97.5% of people will cheat. Now let's use at some sort of reward, right? The bigger, almost everyone will, and they won't call it cheat. What they'll say is, I needed to do it for my family before it was done to me. They'll rationalize it. So now let's take money, which would be the ultimate game like that, and say, if I created this system where I lent money into existence and nobody knew that this didn't, then I could have created tons of power. Then that would happen over and over and over through history. Because 97.5% of people would do it. Yeah. Right. So now think through history and through that same thing, and you see who were the 2.5% who didn't. Probably the religious leaders, right? Who in fact, every religion at the base of the religion has don't lend. Usury and everything else. There don't and
variations of it. Yeah.
Variations of that same thing, and it might be the same thing. And those people, they were always killed, and so they were killed. And then we celebrated those people, not just religious leaders, but others. We celebrated those people because I think they were speaking to our higher being, right? What we wanted to be, but we couldn't hold. But if 2.5% of people won't cheat, that's a lot of people running nodes. And most people just want to act in a world that they won't get cheated. So if the base reality is protected by people who won't cheat, then most of the world will follow the base reality. Most people just fall into that trap because they need to do it before somebody does it to them. And they don't have the conviction, they don't have an ability to stand up against that power, because standing up against that power previously in all previous realities had massive personal and family risk, death, right? And I think what changes in Bitcoin is because of the decentralized and security network of the nodes and the network, and you can be hidden from this. More people go and protect that. That crowd, and now you have an incentive not to cheat.
Yeah, this reminds me of two things here. First, a wonderful Rothbard book about the history of economic thought, where he lists all of these. Yeah, this is pre-Enlightenment, most of it. So there's religious leaders that were against usury and lending and stuff. But he also points out like the flaws in each and every one of them's thinking, because it wasn't until Menger and Mises that there was actually a framework, a first principles framework for this, and that lending itself is not bad. It's the creating credit out of thin air. So that's the bad part. Yeah. And not even interest is bad. It's just the price of tomorrow. Right. Ka-ching. And we wrote about the game theory in back to Inverse of Clown World. This is a chill episode. Turns out to be. But the first chapter is about, you're familiar with a mathematician called Axelrod? He made an experiment where he does the prisoner's dilemma over and over again, and turns out the best tactic to play that game, if we play it once, you should cheat to win. But if you play it over and over again, and the more you play it, it's more like cooperate until the other guy cheats, and then retaliate appropriately. So it's basically natural law. It's the non-aggression principle expressed in mathematics. And I found that so interesting. And I think personally that that's what Bitcoin enables. It enables us to do exactly that. We choose to trust each other, and when we find a bad seed, we weed them out, and this like we keep on trusting the people that are still here.
Yeah,
yeah.
But keep in mind in Bitcoin too, if there was a way, and imagine how much money is coming in this, and money I'm describing through fiat for a second, but a lot of people will feel so rich in that system that they will go back to the other system. They'll sell back into it. That's going to so
we've seen it so many times.
Yeah. And many others like think about the people who have stayed firm in being a maxi, this entire time, and driven all of the gains in this and fighting and for as long as they've been. That's what it's going to look like for a long time more. And a lot of the people we know today, 97.5%, maybe not as many. Maybe that's not. It won't be that high. I hope it's not that high.
It's more like 21%.
Yeah, but exactly. But many will take the money. It's going. We have to expect, if that's always been human nature, why would it change?
This is basically everyone who is buying the Bitcoin ETF at this point, for example. They're not even a little bit into it. Maybe they're a little bit into the new system.
And that would be a different thing. And I don't want to be careful there. And I only say that, Luke, because yes, if they're not running nodes, if they're not as deep as this, if they're not transacting in Bitcoin, if they have a paper derivative of Bitcoin trying to get rich, then it might be they're just totally into their system, or it might be their first step down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And either are okay. By the way, there's going to feel like in the years to come, there's going to be feel like there's way more people that don't understand this, that are coming down the rabbit hole, that are deep in the rabbit hole. And it's just, if there's enough people running nodes, if there's enough people protecting it, what gives me hope is this: the cryptographer list was 70 people in 1992. There's certainly a lot more than 70 people that know this secret now, and that are advocating, that are building on it, they're putting their time into it. And so how many more people are protecting this net where you can already see this happening? And just the sheer numbers of how many people don't know this, you can expect a lot of chaos as people are trying to understand this and get deeper and deeper. But we should invite them all and see who sticks.
Yeah, I totally agree. So speaking of that, we sort of have to bring up Bitcoin knots and the whole spam debate. Like, what's your position on that?
So Bitcoin Mechanic is friend, and I think that I haven't weighed into this discussion very much. So I will now. I have been running knots. I haven't. I won't upgrade to the new version. Or sorry, I have been running core. I won't upgrade, and I'm going to run knots. And so I think they're on the right side of this. But it's also, I'm not as vitriol against core and everything else as many people are. I think it would be easy to make a whole bunch of mistakes. To trust 20, 30, 80 people to know everything we're talking about Bitcoin would be ludicrous. In fact, a lot of the threat model to Bitcoin used to be, what if core was compromised? And if you just ran what would naturally happen from a centralized system that was getting stronger and stronger through our actions, you'd expect core to get compromised at some point. And I've always said, well, it doesn't matter, because you would just split it off because it can't be stopped. And so what Luke and Bitcoin Mechanic and others had really just showed is they made Bitcoin stronger and more and ossified more by providing choice. Like when core came in with heavy-handed, here's the way we're doing it, another thing was created, and the market spoke. Yeah. And that's why I think we're 16.6% knots today and growing. So it's telling you something. It's telling you that this can't be. No one can say this is what you have to do. The more you do that, this is what you have to do, the more you're going to drive people to make sure this is decentralized and secure, because those risks are too great. So what I would say is there's too many people who care. There's too many people who care about this, who are not going to bury their head in the sand and say, I'm going to accept those risks.
No. Just to explain that number, 16.6%, which might sound low to a lot of people, like it's still higher than the people who have upgraded their old core nodes to the latest software. And that's the important metric here. So most people running core are just too lazy to, or just actively chose not to upgrade the software because they didn't like the latest upgrade. And like, regardless of what technical side you're on this debate, I think every Bitcoiner should be happy that it's happening, even if you think that Luke and Mechanic are spooks, and that they, at least there you can see that the community is reacting to something. And that's like, to me, that was during the block size wars, that was the first time I saw that play out in real life. And that's where I was like, oh, holy shit, this actually does what it promises. And I was convinced at that point.
Yeah. So that's if this is your first go around at something like this, it could spook you. If it's not, what you're seeing is that active participation, fighting for the thing that's really critical. And you see other people who don't think it's as critical, and their view of reality, well, they could have that view of reality. And that is when you say the monetary maximalists, right? That I'm a monetary maximalist, because if this stays decentralized and secure, nothing of the other things matter, right? This frees humanity. If it gets broken, it doesn't. And so I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for something very, very different. And that you'll see in Bitcoin, very different takes on that same subject, which would be normal as you're going through this chaotic change. And this doesn't mean that I'm against a bunch of the core people too, because they're trying their best under a whole bit. Like every time you try to change something, that would be a hard job, right? But I'm on the side of knots in this.
Okay, good to hear. So the reason for monetary maximalism, regardless of what side you end up in this debate, like the economic viewpoint here is that right now, real estate, for instance, is being used as money, as a store of value or medium of change over time, which makes it worse as housing for a human being because the billionaires buy all the beachfront property and people can't afford houses anymore. It's worse in some areas of the world and a little less worse other places. But the thing is, the inverse of that is true for money. So if money has other use cases than medium of exchange over space and time, it gets worse as a form of money. So if the blockchain is clogged down with stupid JPEG pictures, it's worse for the system. So, and I think both sides of this are actually against spam. It's just the modes of how they want to get there. The viewpoints are that's really where the debate is. And another thing about developers in general in Bitcoin and in Nostr, for instance, I see this when people are funded by grants and don't really have skin in the game, so there's no market incentive to do this or rather than that. In Bitcoin, for instance, like I would like it if the core developers all had giant stacks, so they had a lot to lose from fucking up the system. So how do you see that? Is there any way we can make a BIP that in order to make a BIP, you have to have 10 Bitcoins? Like,
I think that would be a dumb idea. Sorry.
Yeah, I think so too. But
we're talking about change. We're talking about building this thing and making sure it stays decentralized and secure against human nature, and it's going to be messy all the way through. To get from one system that we've always lived in to a different system that describes a totally different reality is just going to be painful and messy, and there's going to be a million fights along the way. And the fights are many of those fights. If you think about what would you do, take the other side. What would you do if most people didn't know this? They were living in this perceived reality, and you needed to stop Bitcoin because if it didn't stop, it would take all of the power and distribute it to the people who should have had it in the first place, right? What would you do? You would do anything, right? And that anything, if you think about 3-letter word agencies, throughout time and what they do that you might not know, right? And how many people will sell themselves for money, right? Then we should expect a lot of things coming against Bitcoin, and most people being confused about what that really meant, right? So just, it has to look like this. You don't have to bite. You have your own choice to what that looks like. You can go as deep as you want. You can go as deep as understand your agency, see these fights, see what side of this you're on, and you can choose what Bitcoin is to you. And I think that's important. When you talk about where does the money come from, the free market is extraordinarily hard to build value. Why probably it gets co-opted all the time is because it's easier to rent seek, right? The free market, the only way you win more of the pie is by delivering immense value to somebody else, so everyone else wins. So where does the money come from for the grants? Where does the money come from all of this? It comes from people who have made money in the opposite system.
Yeah.
Right?
Either by likely by rent seeking.
Right.
Yeah.
Likely by rent seeking, or being really successful at a thing that lives on top of rent seeking. That doesn't make them bad or anything else, but it does produce a risk factor of that whole thing if all of the money is coming from there and everybody believes and you had to stop this because it changed that.
No, the way I see it, if Bitcoin was dependent on what developers do or dependent on what miners do, it wouldn't be Bitcoin anymore. It has to be up to the nodes. Otherwise, it's already dead. Like
and then in time, the economic nodes, not just the nodes. If the economic nodes were all on top of the centralized system, and that's where the fee generation was, then the miners would go there. So it's not just nodes. It has been till now, but then it'll be more and more the economic nodes. That's why Lightning, Fedi, Arc, Spark, all of these things need to emerge in a way that's decentralized, and it's happening in a way that's decentralized and secure, because then more if there was one economic node, and that was the majority of the mining profits.
Can we dig into this just a little further? This is actually a really interesting topic.
Start by explaining the term economic node. And before that, a little disclaimer. This was a popular term used during the block size wars because it was very important there. I sort of dislike the term because in a way everything is an economic node, including no coiners, because you can't single out an element of the economy. Everyone's connected, Kevin Bacon numbers and so on. But define the term economic node.
The fees generated on top of Lightning, that's what I would say is an economic node. So let's imagine all of the fees generated were from Tether, and everybody dealt in Tether. And that was on top of Lightning, and that was centralized. Then if there was a break into a system that needed to stay inflationary, and all the mining was after the fees, right, as well, they would likely side with where the economic activity was, right? And so to be robust enough, as this becomes a medium of exchange, it has to be sufficiently open source and decentralized, like what Breeze is doing, like what Fedi is doing, like what a bunch of in a way that produces volume, peer-to-peer volume, that is not a centralized organization.
So I think the definition way back then, or the Voskulian definition, or whoever came up with it, is the nodes that receive incoming payments on chain, and I mean, Lightning nodes are on top of that, of course, but my point with saying that there's no real difference is like Coinbase's node, for instance, or let's say Wallet of Satoshi's node, for just to make an example here. They have to cater to their client, to their customers. If the customers don't like what node they're running, they at least have the potential to leave and choose another wallet. So and how strong are those powers? I mean, most users don't care about this stuff.
That's actually what I'm getting at. So that would naturally, most people will use a stablecoin instead of Bitcoin, because most people are still in a perceived reality where inflation is normal, and the stablecoin gives them more value than their currency. But a stablecoin is a guaranteed loss coin against Bitcoin, and it's part of a construct that is still an inflationary monetary system. So that guaranteed loss coin against Bitcoin, that system has to, not might, that system has to attack Bitcoin. These are opposites. It has to attack Bitcoin at some point. Now, it might not do that for some time, but how would it do it? If you had enough transactions just inside this, let's say it was Coinbase, Wallet of Satoshi, let's say you aggregated enough those and all the transactions were there, you would probably launch the attack sometime then where people didn't know this, right? Didn't know the risk and everything else from that. But an inflationary monetary system cannot coexist with a deflationary one, and the problem is there's a lot of people that think it can. They're bolting on two different thoughts that are opposites.
This is where we differ from Saylor, for instance. No, Bitcoin is the literal antidote to the dollar.
Yeah. And saying that, maybe it's a bridge too far. But again, maybe he can't say that because because he's a public company and he can't say that, and he's been tapped on the shoulder not to say that. It's too far. But it doesn't matter. It's like I can say that, and it's true. Right? These systems cannot coexist. The debt is already insolvent. The debt is lent into existence. It can't allow deflation. So it can't allow. So instead of saying it can't allow deflation, just say insert this. It can't allow the free market.
No, I mean they can coexist if Bitcoin will die at some point.
Yeah. So what I mean, one system has to kill the other. Yeah. That's really what we're talking about. It's really that simple. One system has to kill the other. You should decide, every single person should decide which system that they want to protect.
Which way, Western man?
which system do they want to spend their time helping and spend their time advocating for? And as they do that, they will become the agent of change that helps move that system forward for everyone else.
Great news! The Bitcoin Infinity Show has a new lead sponsor. This is BitVault, a new multi-sig wallet that lets you not only put Bitcoins into cold storage, but into super duper polar bear meat in your freezer type cold storage using the time lock function. This protects against $15 wrench attacks because the attacker doesn't know that you have this thing running in the background. So you can just secretly take back your Bitcoins while the attacker thinks he got it, sort of. So go to bitvault.sv to find out more. You can use code Infinity for a 10% discount. They have a pre-sale here that's still in beta, but you can get a lifetime deal for $199. This is 100% open source, 100% non-custodial, and there's zero counterparty risk. So what are you waiting for? Check out bitvault.sv right now. And speaking of private keys, you should, of course, take control of your private keys. And you do that by getting yourself a good old hardware wallet. And our favorite is the Bitbox. And they have a new edition called the Bitbox O2 Nova. The Bitbox O2 Nova has a tempered glass display, which is new and shiny. It has next level security because they have the latest security chip installed. And now it works directly with iOS. So you can plug it into your iPhone or your iPad directly, and it will work perfectly for you. It works on all other devices as well, Windows, Linux, Commodore 64, whatever. So go to bitbox.swiss and get a Nova right now. Use code Infinity for 5% off. And if all this responsibility sounds a little too much for you, we have a perfect service to recommend, and that is the bitcoinadvisor.com. These are nice fellows from down under, and they can help you with Bitcoin inheritance planning. It's a collaborative custody solution where you're still 100% in control. Go to the bitcoinadvisor.com to check them out, and I think you can use code Infinity there too. All right, back to the show.
Well, maybe now we can take this a little more practical. The last time we talked, Fedi was a big part of what you were looking at as far as a solution here. And then we talked to Obi actually a year ago now in Riga last year. How is everything going with Fedi, and how do you see that as the part of the solution here?
I'm equally as excited about it. It was a really hard lift. To try to build private, people don't care about privacy until it's too late. And if you think about what's happening even in AI, that system is essentially built off of you, right? And it's a centralized system that's getting better and better and better, and potentially changing your mind about things, and everybody's inside it. And you have to have something outside of that system. You have to have private communications. All of the communications you can assume are co-opted. And so you have to have privacy. You have to have privacy and money. And Fedi, by the way, it brings both privacy and money and communications, critical tech. But to develop privacy, if you think about what they had to go through to build that, and here's one of the, I say, long poles in the tent, a really hard to solve problem. When you're setting up a federation and you have to find 4 other people, that ideally you don't know because you don't want to get coerced together. And they all have to run nodes to be able to set up a federation that then anybody else can act on and be completely private. It's really hard to do that in a privacy preserving way. Think about even people who are running Bitcoin nodes. It's a technical challenge. People press the easy button. They'd rather go to Wallet Satoshi. They'd rather do all of the easy things that are in the centralized system. And so getting outside of that was a monumental lift. What I'm excited about is they're about to launch something where they have essentially 15 OG guardians. And those guardians are highly trusted people who have set up, I will act as a guardian for somebody else. What that does is now anybody who wanting to set up a federation can go and choose a number of guardians. All those guardians don't know each other. And what that does is it produces, it solves that risk problem for everybody, because now those guardians can't conspire against the federation. Because they don't know each other. And so that was a technically a really big solve, and it's just about to launch. And so I think they have high hundreds, maybe even low 200s of people waiting to start federations, which now they can do it. Now they can easily press the easy button. And so now those federations can really grow fast in interoperability between them. But more than that, it's actually my primary wallet now. But it's not just my primary wallet. It's not quite now my primary communication method, but it's becoming my primary communication method for the same thing as I worried about everything else, including Signal and WhatsApp. Now, they'll all be compromised.
There are other people working on this very same problem, but in different ways. I know Marty, for instance, and also Jeff Jeff G are working on private messaging over Nostr. Keat is another thing, Paulo's side project, or maybe it's his main project. What are your opinions on those? Do you have any insight into that?
I think the market will decide, right? And I'm for all things that are competing to provide more privacy and more ways to be able to solve this problem, because this problem is coming. This problem is already here. It's actually, and most people don't realize how big the problem is. In Canada, where I'm moving from, you can't get information on Facebook, and so the government tells you what information that is right. This is happening everywhere.
The right? UK is horrible.
Yeah. It's and so when you don't have a voice, so this is critical tech. Privacy is critical tech on top of Bitcoin. It's coming, and it's coming really fast. This problem was known a long time ago. Some of the early people who tried to solve it have been shut down, jail, or like so. It would, but it's being solved in a myriad of different ways, and I'm excited for those solves.
No, I love that way, like the whack-a-mole we talked about yesterday. Like when something is struck down, back in the block size wars, there's a BitPay where there's now BTC Pay server. They were a triggering thing for that. My Trust in You is broken. Great movie, documentary about BTC Pay server, by the way. And one of my favorite projects now is Vexel. That's a really exciting thing, which is peer-to-peer Bitcoin trading that no government agency can do anything about. So stuff like that coming up. It all excites me, and that these things are actually being built. And people think, a lot of people naively think that these will just take off and conquer the market because they're so much better. But what they don't get is this: these are just a bunch of enthusiasts and passionate people that don't necessarily, like, there's no big marketing team. This is not a corporation developing a great big thing. This is very grassroots, all of it.
What the market, though, all the time, entrepreneurs look crazy for building something that they know is right, that the market doesn't know is right. A lot of what we're seeing now is similar to Bitcoin evolving, right? It's similar to what the cypherpunks knew long before I knew what would happen in a centralized money and how everything would become centralized. These people are early insights, and they look crazy to the perceived wisdom at the time. And then if they're right, they're rewarded really well in the growth of their company or growth of whatever they're doing. And what you're saying is this counterbalance is, we won't live in a centralized world. It won't look like that. Now, there's a ton of risk to that along the way, because if you just, I'll give you a risk, a major risk. If you drove all prices up in a control system, AI was bringing all prices down, and now you were, more and more people were falling out of the world, prices, and they couldn't live. Those same people would be incentivized to burn it all down. CRISPR, AI, create viral strains. So you would actually cause the demise of the thing. You'd build more fragility into the thing you were trying to protect. As you were trying to protect it from that system, you would drive the destruction of that system. And that's where we are today. And there's so many people inside this trying to stomp out crime, stomp out this, stomp out immigration, stomp out all of these people. Many of those people hurting from the very same structure that's creating that's essentially a crime against humanity from this, and feeling well within their means to do that. And those people will rise up with the same tech that's free, and create way worse pain for that system than people realize. The system is causing this, and people don't rise up when they feel hopeful, and so this is a change of systems a massive change of systems with most of the world on the wrong side. Now, those insights, what we're talking about now, those insights are the people that are building to the other side in privacy tech, and to make sure that doesn't look like this, that you can be free, you can have agency, you can build a better life for yourself. Of course it's going to go there. Of course those people will be well rewarded, because it won't look like this. And they're building the rails, they're building the path to a better world.
So does the fiat demise actually have to play out? Like, do we have to have a crisis before this actually takes off? Because I think Bitcoin is hope, right? And when people see Bitcoiners doing well, being healthier and wealthier and whatever metric you measure by, Bitcoiners have more and more influence, more and more political influence, more and more monetary influence in everything. Isn't that just going to make non-Bitcoiners, is it going to make them envy them to the extent that they will become socialists and take all their money? Or is it going to make them admire them and try to aspire to be like them? I'm conflicted about this.
Yeah, I think it depends. And I think each different country will have different outcomes based on what the people in that country decide and leaders decide, and what this looks like. We're living in a very centralized world right now on broken money, and that is going to, and because most of those people within that certain don't see themselves as stealing, don't see themselves as, and the reinforcement mechanisms of that, or inside this system. So I would say they're not bad people, or most don't have any idea what we're talking about. They're in that construct. Well, that construct's getting worse and worse and worse, and they're trying to solve these problems from that construct, making it worse. So that probably means more crises from that, more designed crises, more fear, more manipulation, more coercion. That I suspect that's what it means. Now, you don't have to feed that beast. You can just object you can know it's coming, and you can refuse to let yourself get co-opted, your energy get co-opted by it, knowing it's coming, and you can instead apply that energy into Bitcoin.
Yeah, I remember I got a lot of backlash for a tweet when I pointed out exactly this, that when I see rebels tearing down surveillance cameras in city centers, they're actually funding the surveillance cameras because they're reinforcing the system, because the system now has to extract more wealth from them.
I use the same thing with go break windows, tear down, burn cars and everything else, and go home. Then you go home next day, it's all repaired. And where did the money come to for the repairs? From you.
Yeah, you paid for the things you destroyed, and this is the non-aggression. Back to the non-aggression principle. It's like another example from the book. No, this is from the praxeology book. If you want to jump out of an airplane, you first need to acquire a parachute, at least if you want to jump out of the airplane more than once. And if the way you do that is that you division of labor, you do whatever you are good at, you get paid, and you buy a parachute. If instead you steal the parachute, you're destroying the very system that made the parachute possible in the first place. And this is why, like, the free market is really behind everything good in the world. It's just that it's so misconstrued by the people who are rent-seeking. So the words have just been co-opted all over them. And people think that free market forces are bad. They, by their very nature, they can't be bad if they're honest. Like
it's a global competitive force to provide more value.
Yeah,
and everybody wins by it. There is no loser. Everybody wins by it.
And unless there's theft baked into the system.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. From an actual free market, everybody wins. You're playing an infinite game. Yeah. We've just never seen that description. So no wonder why people are confused by that topic, because we've never seen a true description of a global free market. We've had a local free market for some time. The Constitution was that. The authors of the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, set up each person freedom and rights, and that couldn't be taken away. And that was the thing that propelled it. It moved a whole bunch of people from other places of the world to a free market. It was the rise of the U.S. before that system got co-opted by the Central Reserve.
Yeah, and it benefits the poorer you are, the more it benefits you, because the poor have more to gain from lower prices simply by the law of diminishing the marginal utility.
But not only that, because every single, I used this in Madeira when we were talking, but all of the ideas compete for us, and so if you add more ideas from more people, we get richer faster, because that it's not just prices fall. It was just so how many ideas do we miss out on right now? Now just take those two sides, right? The more something centralizes, the less ideas, the less humanity flourishes. The more it decentralizes, the more ideas, the more wealth we all have. And so now if you ran a kind of a pendulum from what we're talking about, is we've never lived on the very right-hand side of that 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people. We've always lived somewhere where we could extract from those people for us, right? And then it's always moved and centralized more and more and more for the smaller and smaller people. And of course, as you do, all of humanity suffers.
And even despite all that centralization, you have a device such as this, with the mobile phone, which almost every kid in Africa has one now. And no one predicted that in the 80s. We thought Africa was fucked. So the free market forces are so strong that even when they're, sometimes describe it as a dog on 3 legs, because it's so handicapped by the centralization and the interventionism going on everywhere. Even in that reality. As you put it once, we turned sand into this.
Right.
That has access to all the world's books, movies, and songs. Like it's just amazing. And when add Bitcoin on top of that, or it's not actually on top, but
it's
below.
a base for if
you have that as a base, then it's just awesomeness for everyone at all times, going forever. It's
not to say that there wouldn't be problems to solve, just the problems would be solved faster and faster and faster, and the free market would solve those better than anything else could. Because what you're choosing on a centralized system is saying, you can't solve this. I know better.
So let's just address the fear of deflation that most people who have been taught economics in school has. They say that if there's deflation, people wouldn't buy shit. And I think it's pretty easy to debunk this. But what's your way of debunking that?
Have you ever bought a phone?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever bart a TV? Do you buy food?
Yeah.
You buy stuff. You buy things you want when you want. So let's argue the other thing. Let's argue inflation instead, and you can see how ludicrous that comment is. It is the only reason you buy things because if you don't, your money loses value. So if you don't, your money will be stolen from you, right? That's the only reason you buy things. If you built an economy based on people only buy because otherwise we're going to steal their money, what would that look like?
People would buy more and more shit, and
who would win and who would lose from that system? Would you win? Right? So it is so ludicrous that people say that they wouldn't buy if prices got lower. They would buy when they felt right that they wanted to purchase, just like you do now, but without the theft in your money.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty simple way of putting that. It still doesn't convince everyone, but I point people towards the deflation thesis all the time because I don't know. I think it should be just so much more obvious. Why do you think people still don't get it? So many people still don't get it.
We have an entire system that is responsible for and getting paid for convincing people about economics when you could explain economics to a 5-year-old super easy. Super easy. We trade with each other to gain more value and prices fall. The more people we trade with, the more divisional labor, the more ideas, the faster prices fall. That's economics, period. And everything else is pseudoscience to stop something so simple you could explain to a 5-year-old.
The 5-year-old could explain it to you.
And people are so afraid to think about economics because they look at all these formulas, and all these different words to explain what banking is, and to try to go through that nonsense when it's just a Rube Goldberg machine that is because I get to increase money supply, because I get to lend money out with no cost that has usury interest. If I create money out of nothing and I have you in debt for the money I created out of nothing, it's a pretty good gig, right? And so you'd have to have a whole contingent of people who believed in that reality, who would propagate that reality, and you'd have to have more and more mental masturbation, right? To try to follow that logic when it's clearly not true, right? It's clearly not true.
Yeah, mental gymnastics don't give you more mental muscle, unfortunately.
Well, Jeff, I think we probably need to wrap up pretty soon here, but I think I just wanted to end on a little bit of the how do you see things going in terms of, say, local adoption and these efforts that we're making? I mean, you came halfway across the world to my little neck of the woods. And by the way, I feel validated hearing that someone like you is exiting Canada now. It's not like I had a crystal ball or anything, but I left 4 years ago. And in that time, I've found a new place that I'm enjoying quite a lot. And it's not for everyone, for sure, but it's my little slice of home. What do you think? Does the EU have some hope of pulling things out here? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm worried about the EU too.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. I would say that I've been saying this for some time, and I finally jumped on it. I love it. Leaving Canada is really difficult for me. And because I have such relationships, such long-term relationships, such kind of a structure there, family, friends, everything else. So really hard to leave. But I've been saying for a long time that what's coming, you have to design flexibility into what you're doing. And so I'm paying the exit tax. I'm leaving, and and I don't want to, but I just feel like it's time to design flexibility into my life too. So because things are going to change, and they're going to change pretty quickly in different regions. There's going to be capital controls. There's going to be wealth taxes. Different countries are going to operate differently on this. And if you're stuck in a country that is now you're stuck, that's going to be a bad day.
Do you think it's still worth it to advocate where you are locally, though? I mean, in Canada, there's some great communities that are building lots of great things still, right?
So yeah, I think wherever you are, whatever you do, you should advocate, and you should keep doing that. And Canada pound for pound really punches well in Bitcoin. There's a lot of great Bitcoiners from Canada, but a lot of them are also moving. Right, or what Ben's doing in Alberta and his local scene, he's doing a great job there. Vancouver has a thriving community too. It's just the federal government control, at least at this point. We just elected a central banker, and I suspect things are going to not get better for some time.
I mean, I had the pleasure of visiting Alberta and Calgary for the first time a couple of months back, and it was so good to see, and like the community is really thriving there, and there's really Alberta independent. Like I became a Alberta independence maximalist over a weekend there, and it's beautiful. I mean, there's always an argument for you should stand your ground and fight where you are. But at some point, there's also maybe my time is spent better if I move and try to influence whatever's happening back home from somewhere safe.
And I think that each person's going to make that decision based on their own family dynamics and what they're looking at. And I don't ascribe that. I think people should feel whatever they want to do on each of those. They should do. They should do that. Just for me, it got to a point where I needed to make the move for my family, thinking about what the future holds. I may move back. I plan to still go back quite a bit, but for now, it's time to go.
Well, looking forward to having more conversations like this, maybe elsewhere, probably elsewhere, and probably not in Vancouver, but maybe. Well, you never know.
Well, and I hope you enjoy what you see here in Finland. I think we're building some things that are worth pursuing here, and there's lots of great Bitcoiners here. The community is small but growing, and so thanks a lot for coming here to help boost this particular signal, and I hope this turns into one of those places that it's actually positive to stay in. Or maybe I'll be on my way to Madeira or something like this in a few years.
Exactly.
Let's see. But thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Thank you, brother.
You betcha, buddy.
And like, subscribe, and brush your damn teeth. You'll have beautiful teeth, like Jeff.
I think we'll end it there. This has been the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Thank you for listening.
What was the teeth thing?
Oh, it's our. We've been saying that since forever. Like, subscribe, and brush your teeth. It's just a stupid thing. But I saw your lovely dental smile. It's like reminded me of it. And Luke is gonna, now tell me that was stupid.
We'll leave this in. Bye, everybody.
Oh, this was fantastic.